This is the Music History In-Depth podcast for June 19th through the 25th. On this week's show, we discuss a report that decimated the entertainment industry, a classic song that started an icon's career, a couple of sad endings to some amazing careers, and we say happy birthday to a few people, one of whom is a member of Duran Duran. Let's start with a pretty scary time in American history. It is said that America is more divided today than it has ever been. The more you study history, though, the more you realize that that statement is a complete and utter lie. These days, social media and the media in general, with its clickbait style of quote-unquote journalism, want you to feel like we're more divided because division makes them a lot of money. And it gives them a lot of free pub. It also gives them a lot of fame. In reality, though, we are no more divided than, say, the 1960s, when you had the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, the counterculture movement, and the feminist movement as the fights of that era. There was, of course, also the slavery era, the whole thing between the North and the South, and the Civil War. That was pretty divisive, I'd say. Fought a war over it. And then there was this next chapter in American entertainment history that we're going to talk about today. First up, though, a little backstory for you. In the late 1940s, after World War II, communism became the biggest thing that was threatening America and quote-unquote Western values. The Cold War began to take shape and the battle lines were drawn. To that end, an American textile importer by the name of Alfred Kohlberg saw an opportunity and began to make a name for himself. He was a member of the China Lobby and the John Birch Society, both groups whose members saw communists behind every single corner and in every crevice of society, especially in the entertainment industry. Kohlberg helped to fund an organization at the time called American Business Consultants Incorporated, which was actually led by 3 former FBI agents. They released a newsletter called Counterattack. The groups worked closely with infamous United States Senator Joseph McCarthy, who by then had made it his mission to root out communism and homosexuals in the United States government. The group also worked with members of the United States House Un-American Activities Committee. That committee already had been using its powers in the late 1940s against the Hollywood Creative Committee after Hollywood Reporter founder and publisher William R. Wilkerson published an anti-communist propaganda column called A Vote for Joe Stalin, a.k.a. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. In the article and in following articles, Wilkerson named Hollywood creatives as being sympathetic to the Soviet Union. Some decades later, Wilkerson's son apologized for what his father had done, saying that his father had used his power against the Hollywood community as revenge for not being able to buy a movie studio at the time. Well, I guess if you can't build it, then burn it down? No. Dude was a vengeful sort of guy. On June 22, 1950, the American Business Consultants Incorporated, through Counterattack, published a newsletter called Red Channels, the Report of Communist Influence in Radio and Television. This report named 151 entertainment industry people who they said were either communists or communist sympathizers. Among this list were some pretty famous names. People on the movie end, such as Edward G. Robinson and Orson Welles, made the list. People on the music end who made the list were entertainer Burl Ives, composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein, jazz pianist and singer Hazel Scott, composer Aaron Copland, entertainer extraordinaire Miss Lena Horne, folk music singer Pete Seeger, folk music singer Oscar Brand, entertainer Larry Adler, conductor Dean Dixon, entertainer Alfred Drake, folk music singer Richard Dyer Bennett, radio personality Arthur Gaith, folk music singer Tom Glazer, blues guitarist Josh White, entertainer Irene Wicker, pianist and composer Morton Gould, conductor and producer Horace Grenell, lyricist Yip Harburg, entertainer Felix Knight, lyricist John Latouche, pianist Ray Lev, composer Lynn Murray, composer Harold Rome, composer Earl Robinson, and jazz clarinetist and band leader Artie Shaw. Radio show host John Henry Falk, who worked for CBS Radio, entertainer extraordinaire Mr. Harry Belafonte, songwriter Alan Boritz, and record producer Lester Koenig were named in following Red Channel's list, but those lists stuck primarily with Hollywood actors and screenwriters. In total, over 350 Hollywood creatives were named as being communists. There had been some pushback in the late 1940s by Hollywood to what it had been deemed the Red Scare, quote-unquote. In 1947, there was a group called the Committee for the First Amendment, which had some heavy hitters from the entertainment industry like Judy Garland, Lena Horne, Dorothy Dandridge, and Gene Kelly. Unfortunately, their efforts were to no avail once the list came out and the Hollywood studio heads started telling their more famous workers, like actor Humphrey Bogart, to either get in line or risk losing their careers as well. Bogart had to put out a press release stating that he had been naive and foolish for being a part of the group. He never did condemn the actual group, though, as that was part of the compromise that he had worked out with the studio heads. The result of being on the list was that the artists who were named in the Red Channel's newsletter were blacklisted. People lost their livelihoods, and their lives were completely shattered. In today's terms, these creatives were canceled. The only way to get off the list and be in the good graces of the American government again was to provide testimony and, more importantly, names of other so-called communist sympathizers, whether they were actually communist or not, to the House Un-American Activities Committee. Some artists, like Burl Ives, went before the committee and gave names. Most did not, and paid a very heavy price with their entire careers. By the late 1950s, the House Committee's influence had quieted down, thanks in large part to the backlash to Joseph McCarthy's tactics in the United States Senate. The aforementioned John Henry Falk sued the owners of the Red Channel's newsletter for falsely claiming that he had attended and organized communist events. CBS then fired Falk a year after Falk had filed that lawsuit. Falk originally won $3.5 million in 1962, but the amount was reduced on appeal. By then, though, the damage was done to the lives of all those artists who had been named in the Red Channel's newsletter that was published on June 22nd, 1950. And if you think that piece of history sounds awfully familiar, well, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, as they say. Next, let's talk about Mr. Jones and a famous major. In June of 1969, Mr. Jones was on the outs with his record label. His first album was a complete flop, and he was looking for a new label. His manager negotiated a one-record deal with another label, so into the studio Mr. Jones went. On June 22, 1969, he recorded a reworked version of a song he had recorded earlier that year for a promotional film. The song was inspired by another film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, a Stanley Kubrick film. The song was released on July 11, 1969. The song's timing was intentional. At that time, the Apollo space missions were huge news. Apollo 11 had taken on its history-making voyage to the moon, and the song wasn't released until after the mission since it told the story about an astronaut who was lost during a space mission, so that would have been bad karma. Once the song was released, it became a big hit in England, and Mr. Jones, who by then had changed his last name from Jones to Bowie, had finally found his foot in the door of the music industry, and the rest, as they say, is history. David Bowie became one of the most influential artists of all time. The astronaut who was lost on the song's mission, Major Tom, was found in the 1980s in a sequel of sorts to the song, Major Tom Coming Home by Peter Schilling. Bowie's song, Space Oddity, is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as one of the 500 songs that helped to shape rock and roll. The famous studio version of A Space Odyssey was recorded on June 22nd, 1969. Prince Rogers Nelson was born on June 7, 1958, and was the product of musical parents. Prince's nickname was Skipper throughout childhood because he hated the name Prince. Prince also suffered from epilepsy when he was younger and often had seizures. The disease did not stop Prince from being involved in sports, including playing basketball. He also studied ballet, which definitely helped with his dancing skills in his music videos and on stage. Prince's parents divorced when he was 10 years old, and the rest of his childhood was spent bouncing back and forth between parents and new step-parents, much like children of divorce do. Prince also found himself gravitating towards music, having written his first song when he was 7 years old. He was rumored to have learned to play at least 10 instruments pretty well by the time he hit his 20s. By the time he was 19, Prince was signed to a managerial contract, and based on the strength of his demo tape, Prince signed with Warner Brothers Records and released his first album, For You, on May the 7th, 1978, just 2 months shy of his 20th birthday. A little over a year later, Prince released his self-titled second album, which had the hits I Want to Be Your Lover and Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad. In 1980, he released the album Dirty Mind, which got him into some trouble with songs like Head, because the song was titled Head. The lyrics were, well, let's move on. It also got him an opening act spot on Rick James's tour. 1981's album Controversy spawned the hit of the same name. Around this time, Prince started forming side projects like the group The Time. Prince's double album, 1999, was released in 1982 and had the top 10 hits in 1999, Little Red Corvette and Delirious. Little Red Corvette was helped from being one of only 2 songs from black artists that MTV was playing in heavy rotation when the music video came out. The other video, of course, being Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. Still, 5 albums in 5 years was only the beginning. Prince was about to become a superstar only 2 years later on this album. After his 1999 album, Prince decided that he wanted to make a movie that was very loosely based on his life. He called the movie Purple Rain. This album was the second album to also credit his band The Revolution, as they did help to write some of the songs. Certain songs have a little bit of a history. Let's Go Crazy is probably the best crafted song about moral ethics ever to be made. The line towards the end about how pills, thrills, and daffodils will kill is pretty ironic considering how Prince passed away from accidental drug overdose in 2016. The famous drum machine intro after the organs in the beginning of the song is Prince's go-to drum machine, the Linn LM1. Take Me With You was supposed to be for his side project, Apollonia 6, but instead found its way onto the soundtrack. Contrary to popular belief, the female voice on the song is not Apollonia, and it is not Wendy and Lisa from the band The Revolution. It is actually singer Jill Jones. Computer Blue was originally a 14-minute song but got cut back. The original version, I believe, is on the special edition of the soundtrack, or the box set that the Prince estate has put out since his death. Prince played all of the instruments on the songs The Beautiful Ones and Darling Nikki, along with When Doves Cry. For Doves, he was trying to go with a different sound, so he pulled the bass line out of the song. The movie's director told Prince that he needed a song for a montage scene in the movie, so Prince went home that night and wrote and produced When Doves Cried during that night. I Would Die For You and Baby I'm a Star and Purple Rain were all actually recorded a year earlier. At a benefit concert for the Minnesota Dance Theater on August 3rd, 1983, at the now famous First Avenue Club that was in the movie, Prince debuted those three songs as well as his new guitarist, Wendy Melvoin, who became a part of the revolution. The title track of the album has its own history. According to the Revolution's keyboardist, Dr. Fink, Prince wanted to write a song that sounded almost like it could have come from Bob Seger. The band Journey, though, tells a different story. According to them, Prince called them up one day and mentioned that he had written a song that sounded a lot like their hit song, Faithfully. He wanted their blessing so that they wouldn't sue him, of course. Not only did they give him their blessing once they heard the song, but they actually thanked him for asking them, since a lot of bands had ripped off Journey's sound without even asking them first. And if you actually listen to both songs, both Purple Rain and Faithfully, back to back, you can definitely hear the similarities, especially in the chord changes. Purple Rain, the album, came out on June 25th, 1984, and spent 32 weeks on the Billboard Albums Chart's top 10, taking the number one spot for 24 straight weeks. Purple Rain made rumpled pirate shirts a fashion trend, along with being the basis for, of course, a famous Seinfeld episode. It also gave Prince a lot of awards, including some Grammy Awards, a Golden Globe Award, and even an Academy Award for Best Music Score. It is also considered a classic album and one of the greatest albums ever made. Prince's iconic soundtrack to the movie Purple Rain, released June 25th, 1984. Before we continue, we'd like to tell you about the Music History Today podcast, where we go over the events that happened on that particular day in music history. The Music History Today podcast drops every single day, including weekends, on this podcast network. Now, back to the Music History In-Depth podcast. Now, let's talk about two major passings during this week in music history. First off, Frances Ethel Gumm. She was born in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, not Michigan, to parents who were vaudeville performers. Frances became part of her parents' act at the age of 2 when both her and her sisters sang as the Gumm Sisters. The family moved to California when Frances was 4, and it was there, while performing at the age of 13, that she was discovered by a big-time movie studio. She was put into a lot of films, most of them being musicals. And then, after some trouble, she was let out of her contract with the movie studio, but her famous Hollywood friend Bing Crosby gave her a guest spot on his radio show, which opened up another avenue to her career, getting back on stage in front of a live audience like her childhood with her sisters. She started doing concert tours and nightclub acts, and one of those shows went on to become an album, which is the first album by a female performer to ever win the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. Frances is considered a true Hollywood icon who unfortunately had a stereotypical Hollywood story. Having fame never helped her low self-esteem. She, of course, did the usual abuses throughout her career, plus she spent time in a sanitarium and a psychiatric hospital, had a bunch of financial issues, and multiple marriages. Back to her career for a minute. While her concerts and recording career gave her new life, it was her singing in the movies that gave her the most fame. The movies that she sang in are considered classics: The Wizard of Oz, Meet Me in St. Louis, Strike Up the Band, and her movies with Mickey Rooney. By now, of course, you know that I'm talking about the woman who was born on June 10th, 1922 as Frances Ethel Gumm, but passed away tragically on June 22nd, 1969 as Judy Garland, who passed away at the age of 47 on June 22nd, 1969. Next, a sad ending to a legendary king. As 2009 started, Michael Jackson found his career in freefall. By that time, he was rumored to be heavily in debt. His public image had taken a beating, to be nice about it, thanks to 2 criminal trials over the decades for child molestation and public behavior that created fodder for the tabloids, especially the New York Post. Michael had gone from being known as the King of Pop to being called Wacko Jacko in the New York Post, who definitely took a liking to disliking the guy. Even when he held a protest against record labels for ripping off recording artists, the media still portrayed it as a publicity stunt when he was actually years ahead of his time in talking openly about the ills of the recording industry, which still, of course, happened to this very day. Michael aimed to get back on top, if only for a little while. In March of 2009, he announced a set of concerts called the This Is It Tour. It was supposed to start in London, England, and go to Paris, France, New York City, and Mumbai. The choreography was being done by Kenny Ortega, the IT choreographer at that time, after working on the hugely popular High School Musical TV movies. The concert dates were set, which sold out immediately, and rehearsals began. Along with a career in decline and rumored heavily debt, Michael was having some health issues. He was especially having very serious problems sleeping. He enlisted the help of Dr. Conrad Murray to help him with the sleeping problems. Dr. Murray was giving him a combination of a few different drugs and was supposed to be constantly supervising Michael's sleep while these drugs were being administered to him. On the evening of June 24th, Michael went to rehearsals for the tour. He ended rehearsals after midnight and then went home. During the morning of June 25th, Michael went to sleep. He did not wake up. The coroner labeled his death a homicide. Dr. Murray was brought up on charges and convicted of involuntary manslaughter charges for leaving the room to take a phone call and for not monitoring Michael when the drug cocktail was being administered. Dr. Murray served a 2-year prison term. Michael's death overshadowed the death earlier that day of another Hollywood legend, actress Farrah Fawcett, who passed away earlier that same day from cancer. As for the concert tour, thankfully, the final rehearsal was a dress rehearsal and it was being recorded. The footage from that final rehearsal was used in the concert film Michael Jackson, This Is It, which became the biggest money-making documentary of all time up to that point, despite only being in theaters for a few weeks. Michael Jackson passed away at the age of 50 on June 25th, 2009. Okay, I get it. It's been kind of a bummer of a show so far. We've dealt with a lot of death and careers being ruined, the death of 2 of the biggest icons of the 20th century. And, of course, I always like to leave everybody all nice and cheery with some good stuff that happened during this week in music history. So that's exactly what we're going to do. This week will be no different, I guarantee it. As a matter of fact, we're going to start off with an iconic album, and then we're going to finish off with some important birthdays. How about that, huh? Alrighty, let's start with the album. For instance, this Canadian artist was born on November 7th, 1943, and moved to America in the 1960s. She is known as one of the greatest songwriters, either male or female, of all time. Her songs mix romance and longing with social, political, and environmental themes. She is the iconic, the legend, Miss Joni Mitchell. In early 1971, Joni went into A&M Studios in Hollywood, California, and laid down some tracks for an album that she wrote right after her breakup with Graham Nash and during her relationship with James Taylor and a guy she met while on vacation in Europe. Listen, vacation flings happen. What are you going to do? Anyway, James Taylor played guitar on one track, and Stephen Stills played on another track. Otherwise, it was pretty simple instrumentation. On June 22nd, 1972, her 10-track album, Blue, was released. The album was a huge hit, although the two singles that were released from it, Carrie and California, did not actually do well on the singles chart. Blue is considered one of the greatest albums ever made and is on way too many best of lists to even begin to mention here. Shockingly, though, the album was not nominated for any Grammy Awards, although it was finally put into the Grammy Music Hall of Fame. Just goes to show you how strange the Grammys are sometimes. Okay, most times. Anyway, Joni Mitchell's magnum opus about love and loss had the songs All I Want, My Old Man, Little Green, Carrie, Blue, California, This Flight Tonight, River, A Case of You, and The Last Time I Saw Richard. The album Blue, released on June 22nd, 1971. Now, on to some birthdays. First off, let's say happy birthday to Nigel. Nigel, not only being the name of a really good Bond villain, let's be honest, is the bass player who plays in a new wave band that made it big in the early 1980s and is still going strong to this very day, still putting out albums and still selling out stadiums worldwide. During some downtime with this band, Nigel started a few companies, along with doing a few solo albums, but he was also a member of two supergroups, Neurotic Insiders with Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols, along with Matt Sorum and Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses, as well as the band The Power Station with his bandmate Andy Taylor, no relation, Robert Palmer, and Tony Thompson from the group Chic. They had the hits Some Like It Hot and their version of the T-Rex hit Bang a Gong, Get It On. He'll forever be famous, though, at least most famous, for being the bass player for his main group, Duran Duran, who had the hits Notorious, Come Undone, Save a Prayer, Hungry Like the Wolf, Wild Boys, etc., etc., etc. Also, by the way, he is an extremely underrated bass player. Go listen to Duran Duran songs Rio or Is There Something I Should Know. Pay attention to the bass line, and you will see exactly what I mean. He makes such a simple thing seem really, really tough, and it is. The man seriously does not get his flowers for his bass playing. I mean, really, one of the most underrated bass players of all time, in my opinion. In any event, let's say happy birthday to Nigel. Yeah. And Nigel goes by his middle name. That's his preferred pronoun. It's John. John Taylor of Duran Duran, who was born on June 20th, 1960. Next up, this lady was born on June 25th, 1945. She was in a group with her sister Lucy, but found her biggest success as a solo artist. Her career has spread for almost 50 years now, a little bit longer, actually. Along the way, she's had numerous top 10 smashes, including one with her then husband, along with one song where the subject of the song was sworn to secrecy for decades before she finally revealed it to be about 3 different men, only one of whom she said publicly. That would be Warren Beatty. The singer-songwriter of that song, You're So Vain, along with the song Anticipation, etc., etc., and the ex-wife of James Taylor, yep, he pops up again in this podcast, who both sang the top 10 song Mockingbird with this lady, Miss Carly Simon, who was born on June 25th, 1945. Next, we lost this man late in 2016, but during his time in the spotlight, he gave us songs both as a solo artist and as a member of one of the biggest selling duos in rock music history. As a member of that duo, they would be the first Western artist to perform in China. His debut solo album sold over 20 million copies worldwide, and then he faded from the spotlight after numerous battles with his record company and the path his career had gone at that point. Still, people remember him fondly, and his songs are still played everywhere and are considered classics. Whether it was Careless Whisper, Last Christmas, or Wake Me Up Before You Go with the group Wham, or with Faith, I Want Your Sex, or Freedom 90 as a solo artist. His untimely passing at the age of 53 from a fatty liver left a mark on all of the Gen X generation. He was also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Happy birthday to George Michael, born June 25th, 1963, under a Greek name that is way too long for me to even try to pronounce here. Trust me, it is, wow, a really tough one. Next up, Jeffrey Arnold Beck was born on June 24th, 1944, in Surrey, England. Beck's fascination with the electric guitar started early in his life, although his mom actually wanted him to become a pianist. It was his fascination with the guitar that would help him to become one of the most influential and respected guitarists of all time. Beck's early career was steeped in music, and inspired by the likes of Les Paul, he honed his skills and eventually joined his first band, the Bandits, at the age of 16. A series of local bands followed, including the Deltones and the Tridents, where Beck began experimenting with effects pedals and, of course, crafting his now signature sound. A crucial turning point for him came in 1963 when Ian Stewart, the pianist for the Rolling Stones, introduced Jeff to the blues. This exposure, particularly to the work of Buddy Guy, definitely influenced Beck's playing, adding that raw motion and power to his playing style. In 1965, Jeff Beck's career took off when he was chosen to replace Eric Clapton as lead guitarist in the group the Yardbirds. This legendary band, which was known for their blues rock sound, was already pushing boundaries. Beck's arrival further ignited their creative fire, and he had songs like Shape of Things and Over Under Sideways Down to help showcase his prowess and his love for feedback and distortion, definitely elements that would become his trademarks. Despite the band's commercial success and critical acclaim, Beck's need for artistic exploration led him to leave the Yardbirds in 1966 after he had played for a couple of years with Jimmy Page, who of course ended up becoming part of Led Zeppelin. It was during this period that Beck started off his solo career when he started with his single Hi-Ho Silver Lining, a pop experiment that foreshadowed his future genre-bending tendencies. Following his departure from the Yardbirds, Beck formed the Jeff Beck Group, a band that became a launching pad for some of rock's most iconic figures, with vocalist Rod Stewart, bassist Ronnie Wood, who would later play for the Rolling Stones, and drummer Mickey Waller. The group created a sound that fused blues rock with heavy metal and psychedelic music. Albums like Truth and Beckola showcased their raw energy and Beck's virtuosity, with tracks like Beck's Bolero and Shapes of Things becoming staples on classic rock radio and streaming services. The group also witnessed the arrival of another future legend, vocalist Ronnie Montrose, who later formed his group, Montrose. However, internal tensions and a near-fatal car accident involving Beck led to the group breaking up in 1972. Undeterred, though, Jeff formed another power trio with bassist Tim Bogart and drummer Carmine Appice, formerly of Vanilla Fudge. Beck, Bogart, and Appice delivered a heavier, more hard rock sound on albums like Beck, Bogart, and Appice and Live in Japan. Their music explored complex time signatures and showcased Beck's ability to blend blues-inspired licks with blazing technical passages. Despite critical acclaim, the band faced commercial challenges and broke up in 1974. Following the breakup of Beck, Bogart, and Appice, Beck embarked on his own solo career that, of course, defied characterization because that was Beck's way. He embraced a more instrumental approach, showcasing his virtuosity across various genres. He had albums like Blow by Blow and Wired that incorporated elements of jazz fusion, funk, and world music, featuring collaborations with keyboardists like Jan Hammer and Tony Hymas. Tracks like "'Cause We Ended as Lovers" and "Escape" became radio staples, demonstrating Beck's ability to blend technical mastery with melodic beauty. The 1980s saw a shift in Beck's career, with him continuing to explore diverse musical styles. Jeff Beck embraced the rise of synthesizers and electronic music, which were pretty evident in his albums like There and Back from 1980 and Flash from 1985. He also experimented with a finger-picking technique, abandoning the guitar pick altogether. This new approach yielded a more nuanced and expressive sound on albums like Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, which came out in 1989. Never one to shy away from collaboration, though. Beck lent his talents to a diverse group of musicians, which is something that he had done since the 1970s when he played on Stevie Wonder's Talking Book album, including an uncredited guitar part on the song Superstition. He also continued working with Rod Stewart, showing up on Rod's song Infatuation for Rod's 1984 album Camouflage, and a cover version of the Curtis Mayfield-penned Persuasions recorded song People Get Ready for Jeff's 1985 album Flash. In the 1990s, Jeff continued his genre-defining skills, incorporating elements of world music, particularly Indian influences this time, into his work. He had albums like 1993's Amused to Death and 1999's Who Else, which showcased his eclecticism and his willingness to push boundaries even further. Especially on the album Who Else, that one featured a haunting cover of the Ballad of Lucy Jordan from Marianne Faithfull. That one also showcased his ability to turn classic songs into his own with his style. The 21st century brought renewed artistic energy for Beck. He reconnected with his blues roots on albums like You Had It Coming from 2000 and 2007's Emotion and Commotion. The latter album, featuring vocalist Imogen Heap, garnered critical acclaim and earned him his first Grammy Award after all those decades for Best Pop Instrumental Performance. Beck continued his collaborative spirit, working with artists like Josh Stone on Let It Bleed from 2010 and the immortal Mr. Herbie Hancock on 2010's Recordings. These collaborations showcased his versatility and ability to just seamlessly integrate his playing into different musical styles. The final decade of Jeff Beck's life was marked by his continuing artistic exploration and a focus on instrumental music. He released albums like Loud Hailer from 2016 and Cop Car from 2018, which featured a blend of rock, blues, and electronica. Notably, Loud Hailer featured a blistering cover of The Wolf Will Bite Your Ass by The Germs, which demonstrated Beck's ability to do punk into his playing. In 2022, Beck surprised fans with a collaboration with actor Johnny Depp. Their album, 18, featured a collection of mostly cover songs showcasing their shared love for blues and rock music. Despite mixed critical reception, the album highlighted Beck's ability to connect with musicians across generations. Jeff continued to work almost right up to his death from a meningitis infection on January 10, 2023, at the age of 78. As a solo artist, Jeff Beck released 17 studio albums, 11 live albums, and 3 compilation albums. Of those, 10 hit the top 40 in America, with only 1975's album Blow by Blow getting into the top 10, topping out at number 4. He also released 22 singles, although they didn't really chart in America. My personal favorite song of his will always be the song Ambitious. That is the one off of his 1985 album Flash. Jeff also won 8 out of 17 award nominations. The iconic guitar player, Mr. Jeff Beck, born on June 22nd, 1944. Lastly, we salute a man who we lost a couple of years ago, who I bet most people know more for being an actor rather than a musician. This man is a Rhodes Scholar, a captain in the United States Army, a commercial helicopter pilot, and a country music legend. He's been an actor, musician, and a singer-songwriter. He wrote songs such as Me and Bobby McGee for his off-and-on girlfriend at the time, Miss Janis Joplin. He was married for a time to singer Rita Coolidge. Plus, he started a country music supergroup called the Highwaymen with Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Willie Nelson. However, for a younger generation, probably the Gen Xer in you, he's probably best known for playing Whistler in the Blade trilogy movies with Wesley Snipes. That was pre-Marvel Universe, Disney style, that is. A huge happy heavenly birthday to the modern-day Renaissance man and winner of 5 Grammy Awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Award, Mr. Chris Christopherson, who was born on June 22nd, 1936. And that is it for the Music History In-Depth podcast for June 19th through the 25th. Thank you very, very much for listening and or watching if you're on YouTube or Spotify.